Hello, so I'm Santi Pinkerton with Ego News, and today I have the pleasure of interviewing and doing an in-depth interview with a fabulous, one of our most fabulous teachers of the year, Mr. Michael Steele. He is an AP Calculus math teacher. He teaches at Franklin High School, and he's here to share us some of the successes, the challenges, and some of the bright spots that he has been going through with his distance learning. So we're going to start with a little bit of background about Michael and kind of how he started getting into math. So Michael, give us a little bit of breakdown on what brought you to math.
It's first of all, thanks for having me today. It's exciting to have an opportunity to have this conversation and kind of process everything going on. It's an interesting story because I was definitely not a math person growing up, like not in the least. And even going into high school, I knew for sure I wanted to be a teacher, but I definitely wasn't thinking of a math teacher. And it wasn't until probably my junior year at Laguna Creek with Mr. Jason Richmond, where I suddenly realized that these things that I had no real inherent interest in were suddenly captivating to me. And I was determined to figure out my way through these trig identities and these problems. And he just really inspired this love of problem solving in me. And that totally shifted what my plans were for after high school and beyond. And that became my goal, was to be a math teacher like him.
Awesome. Yeah, and we've been going through a lot of problem solving in the last few weeks. And so we've transitioned from going from a brick and mortar classroom to now distance learning. So what can you tell us about what have been some of the general strategies or practices that you found to be successful during distance learning?
Yeah, challenge is a great word for it. I'd say that the biggest thing that I did, my first thing was to decide on kind of a method, and I used an asynchronous method, meaning that I pre-recorded the lectures for my Calculus BC students or the problem-solving videos from other classes, and I had them ahead of time so that way students on any schedule could watch those videos where they were. When I made those videos, I made sure to try to capture as much of the feel of the classroom as possible, and it's not easy to do that because, like right now, I'm just talking to a computer screen the whole time. There's no one here. And I like the audience. I like being able to respond and like feed off of what the students provide and have that natural rhythm. But I made sure that like my face was always visible. So I was always talking to my students. I made sure that if there was an opportunity to draw a little picture in the corner like I normally would, I did that. And I have my little laugh button here, and I'd press that laugh button at appropriate times for jokes. And truthfully, there are times in the classroom where no one laughs at my jokes either. So I was prepared for that. Thanks to a couple of generous students. But I tried to make sure that students could maintain that feel and have that normalcy of being in a classroom and kind of talking about the math. Obviously, it looks different because they can't just lean over to their neighbor and ask a question. But at the same time, there was a sense of comfort that they had with those videos. Other than that, I did have to shift kind of the way I graded. Like we were in particular with AP Calculus on a really tight schedule because the AP exam was basically 3.5 weeks away when we resumed instruction. So I had to shift from being a kind of direct instruction and then review and test kind of person to trying to find the fastest way to give students feedback, like really timely feedback so that they could move forward and not have any conceptual errors. So I really used and took advantage of Google Classroom to leave tons of extensive private comments and make sure that they could see where their issues were so that way they were able to move forward through the curriculum and master as much as possible without the holes that we normally catch just in a normal lesson ourselves.
Wow. Okay. So it sounds like some of the successes are that individualized feedback, being able to respond to them even through texts, really helped. Having those asynchronous, that content developed was very helpful as a strategy. It's interesting, you talk about problem solving, you think of the typical classroom with students working on, paper, drawing things out, figuring things out, calculating things on paper. How, just out of curiosity, how different has that been for them in terms of this environment?
Yeah, it's been interesting because I think that from a perspective of taking a step back, their work looks kind of the same. Like they're still submitting problem sets. Like mine was, I didn't have a digital resource that I could mimic the BC curriculum with. So I just was using my problem sets that I'd written. So I was still grading their feedback the same way, but I think that at the same time, it felt very different. And I did have a number of students report to me that they felt this kind of strange thing, whereas during a normal school day in a brick and mortar classroom, they would learn they'd learn some curriculum and do some practice early on. And then a few hours later, they might begin their homework. They feel this compulsion to like really do it all in one big chunk. And then it doesn't stick the same way. So like trying to navigate even the challenges of balancing things out and diversifying your academic work over the course of the day was something else that kind of popped up.
Interesting, interesting. Okay, so let's talk about some of those challenges. How are you approaching challenges that arise?
Yeah, it can be a major challenge, especially for me learning some new systems like Google Classroom, really working with it extensively for the first time. There's a lot of times where you really get frustrated, but taking that moment to pause and kind of working through it patiently, or asking somebody, I have a colleague that's really comfortable with it, like being able to ask her what she recommends has really helped. I'd say too, the biggest thing for me has all been about like my locus of control and trying to remind myself that there are only so many things that I can control in a given situation. I mean, just this week on Tuesday, we had our AP Calculus exam, and it was with a completely new submission method. It was all based on technology. It went from 51 questions to 2 questions, and it's naturally difficult, like with so much technology in there, that things could go wrong. And I did have a number of students, great students, not having their work submitted correctly. And there's frustration at that moment, and I feel like something's gone wrong and I feel bad, but I can't control the technology. I can't control the submission system or anything like that. All I can do is remind myself to focus on what I can do, reaching out to those students and making sure they feel supported and that they know they're not alone in that, because they definitely weren't, and promising them the same resources that I would anyone, that I'll make them another practice test and that I'll support them as they get ready for the retest on June 1st. And although it doesn't fix every problem, because there's big problems we can't fix, I find that that's really helpful to keep myself grounded and focused on things that I can change rather than the things that I can't.
Okay, excellent. So locus of control is key in being able to control the situation right now. What we're working in. Very good. So, okay, let's talk about some bright spots. Can you share some bright spots or interesting, exciting stories that you've experienced throughout this process with the class, with the students, you and your teaching?
Yeah, absolutely. I will say that I think that a lot of the things that come up to my mind as like highlights or bright spots are moments when, even though we've been doing distance learning and I haven't seen most of my students in a long time, those moments that feel like the classroom, kind of those organic, like kind of silly moments that kind of pop up. Like for instance, on my attendance form, like I mentioned one day in my little fun facts story section, that I've been microwaving bread for breakfast, and just like putting a slice of bread on a plate and just putting it in the microwave. And I didn't know what to call it. And so we had a little poll and they responded and tried to tell me what I should name this thing, because they were insistent it is not toast. So I couldn't call it toast. And like those kinds of moments are the things that happen every day in like a spare 3 minutes or at the beginning of class. And that kind of moment was really amusing for me. And we now call it micro-wa, by the way. Other than that, I'd say that if I had like a single moment that really stands out to me the most, it was in one of our Zoom office hours that I've been doing with our calc students. And I mean, Zoom has been fantastic for that, by the way. Like we had 100 students almost at a practice test going over it and grading it afterwards, or 50 other times. But we also I just hold office hours for the students. And in the first one that we held, students had just picked up their cap and gown at school. And one of the students was wearing his cap and gown and kind of fiddling with the Zoom background to get it so it looked like Golden One. And another student suggested, hey, we should have at our next office hours, we should all wear our cap and gown. And, hearing the thing, I'm like, that's a silly idea, whatever. But the students were excited about it, and they rallied other people and spread the message about it. And so I told them I'd wear my grad robes as well. And the next day, I think it was like a Thursday, we came together again, and there they were wearing the purple. And I mean, we were still doing the same work. We were still doing the same calculus problems. We were still talking about testing procedure and some pretty dry stuff at times. But they were sharing that moment together. And it was a really special one to kind of acknowledge together as a group that they're hurting a little bit about losing that ceremony, or at least not having it on the same schedule they expected. But at the same time, they were comfortable coming together and sharing in a moment that did feel special. And it felt special to me. It still does. So I think that was a cool moment to honor the resilience of some super intelligent and fantastic students, but also students that were just willing to acknowledge that they were feeling something, and they found a way to together sharing a moment of celebration, sort of. So it was really neat to have that, the kind of thing like a sort of mini spirit day that we'd have at school any day, but that they found a way to generate from nothing, basically. So I was just really proud, and honestly on tears a couple times while we were doing the calculus problems, just kind of thinking about it and seeing them in the background. But that was definitely a special moment.
Yeah, from my observations and what I've been able to watch, both from TV and just in general in the district, a lot of great teachers doing tremendous things, great things for their students. And I think the one thing that we all feel is very true to all of us is that spirit that we all get to experience in the classroom. So wonderful. Well, Michael, is there anything else that you'd like to add?
I will say, like, since we talked a little bit about math, and like students like math, this isn't the natural element to learn math in. Like, I love being in the classroom where a student can just lean over to somebody and get a quick clarification and everything moves according to schedule. But I just really encourage everyone to try to maximize it and really invest in the work that they're doing now and lay some foundation. Like, I have full confidence that all of our teachers are going to go back and like make sure that everyone's taken care of when we move forward. But I think that it's good to invest in whatever you have right now and try to maximize what you can get out of it. And other than that, just be honest and ask for help. Like the same way I'm going to ask for help if I'm confused on why my Google Classroom assignment disappeared. Like, if you aren't sure what's going on with the question, ask. Like, I've seen teachers in my department jump up and text me asking about how they can film a video from their phone of a whiteboard at their kitchen table. The teachers want to help you as much as you want to learn everything. So I really encourage people to always ask for help and seek support and know that we're right there with you. Like, we're staying right there with you.
Absolutely. No, all wonderful things. And we're learning tons as teachers, as professionals, as well as the students. Students are continuing to learn. So, and I think what's fabulous in talking with you about it is that you have been able to find a way to stay connected to students. And I think that's huge. And I know all of your students really appreciate everything that you do. So, Michael, we'll let you get back to the awesome teaching that you do. And I want to thank you, and Eagle News thanks you very much for taking this time out of your day to talk with us and share your experiences with us.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you very much.